Hey, so, oops, if you go click down there, click on mute.
Can't find. and land on which we gather today. We have the committee of the whole meeting minutes from December 15th. Cast your mind back.
So move.
Director Stamer,
Okay.
seconded by Director Sarai. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none on the question, all those in favor, opposed if any, that is carried. We get right into our delegations invited presentations, and we are pleased to invite RCMP Superintendent Jeff Pelly, who has deep roots in the Cache Creek Ashcroft area. And he's going to talk to us about the RCMP strategic plan, rural policing, and much more. Welcome, Superintendent Pelly. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity to come here today and present to everyone throughout the region, as well as our local leadership. So as you know, from a policing perspective and our resources and crime doesn't just stop within the city of Kamloops. So a little bit about myself. I've been in this role just over a year. I transferred down as the officer in charge of from the officer in charge of Williams Lake, where I spent nearly 6 years and traveled throughout the North District. And I was posted as a frontline officer here back, I guess, 19 years ago. I'm in my 25th year. I'm pensionable. So it's quite an honor. And growing up off Cache Creek area, many officers that were impressionable on me when I was quite young, and I entered into the RCMP Summer Student Youth Program, and I was fortunate to be called after I did a few years in trades, and then I was in my 3rd year at TRU. It was called UCC back then. And I joined and traveled throughout my experiences. I've been a commander in 3 detachments. I was a district advisory commander overseeing 6 detachments in the Caribou-Chilcotin. I really like the frontline policing, being attached to 1 detachment and steering the, as we call the ship versus the Titanic at a district level, and invested in our communities and policing. So I would really wanted to take this opportunity to come and speak to our rural detachment as well as our municipal detachment, our priorities, and answer many of the questions that you may have given policing throughout the region. So as the commander or officer in charge of Kamloops, I oversee the Kamloops detachment and the Kamloops municipal detachment. And I basically have a strategic plan built. We have enhanced our strategic plan with a mirroring strategic plan and the demographics to the rural area. So we police out halfway to Barrier, out towards Pritchard, and then out to the Deadman Creek area. But we also work in partnership with our detachment commanders that are in front of the policing needs of those communities. I don't know why this is jumping ahead here, Justin. So it's on auto. So my apologies for this little technical issue. You did this one. Yeah, so yeah, looks like I can't talk that fast, but I can be very fast. So, we can just jump right into our priorities as well as where we stand in our municipality. I'm quite proud of the reduction rates over the last 2 quarters. I am presenting to Kamloops municipality later this month. We have 4 strategic priorities. Our first priority is to reduce the impact of property crimes and violent crimes. As you know, we had a growing rate of crimes in areas, and we've been quite progressive. So we continue to focus on our priority offenders and our REVOI offenders. So REVOI is a new program which is called the Repeat Violent Offender Intervention Initiative. We work closely with our Crown Council, and we currently have a number of offenders on that. Our second priority is to reduce crime through community support groups, homelessness, with drug decriminalization, mental health. Those are not criminal offenses, but we're invested and we're engaged with several agencies on a prevention or intervention level, so that we can try to ensure that these things do not lead to a life of crime. Our third priority, obviously, reducing collisions, impaired driving, distracted driving, focused on our highways, our intersections, our crash points throughout our communities and working in partnership with neighboring detachments. And then our fourth priority, which I implemented since I've got here, is obviously internal governance, policing modernization. That's using technology, training, demographics, crime analysts, intelligence-based policing, basically in a fashion where we can advance our approach to crime, not only in enforcement. So I am a big enforcement person. You'll hear me speak about bail reform. You'll hear me speak about offender management, and I'll give you a sample of an offender here later on, which I've had the opportunity to present before, to just show you how much work your police officers and our frontline officers or crime reduction units and support units do, even in our smaller communities that have just uniform policing. We provide a service with our forensics, our police dog services, and we have our municipal policing unit agreement and our provincial policing service agreement. So a little bit of the background with respect to resources. We have a 25-year or a 5-year strategic plan with the municipality of Kamloops to increase our officers. So our officer complement has gone from 136 up to 142 and then 148 this year. And we're going to continue to advance that. We've increased our frontline policing the last 2 years, and we're looking at specialized units. That being said, we have our Kamloops Rural Detachment, where we have 13 officers. 4 of them are Indigenous policing services enhanced, providing throughout the community, and 9 of them are our provincial officers. I've put business cases forward to increase our support staff as well as our frontline members in the provincial areas. And we have units that work closely with them from the municipality that focus on multi-jurisdictional offenders. And I'll speak to that. So that's kind of what we call the FTE complement for our region. Oh, next slide. The whole page, please, Justin. Oh, here we go. So our targeting reduced property crime and violent crime with respect to that is these are the main priorities: targeting our prolific offenders, target fentanyl and illicit drug dealers, as well as our property crimes, and focus on methodologies. Our priority offenders, we currently have 16 priority prolific offenders through this region. They don't just provide a service in our area, they commit crimes in others. And in 2023, we were able to stand up our crime reduction unit, and they were specifically going to focus on these offenders. Our watches, we get nearly 46,000 calls for service a year. They are reactive and proactive in some sense, but this allows the information sharing and this unit to specifically focus on these offenders throughout all our communities, and some that are multi-jurisdictional. In the last 6 months, we just had a group of offenders that were towards Barrier, as well as had a residence there and committing crimes in our city, but they were blended with offenders from Kamloops, and we focused on them very assertively. And they were just committing property offenses, and we were able to get a number of stolen vehicles, as well as charges on a break and enter into one of the rural businesses. One offender actually has a win, believe it or not, just received nearly 600 days jail time, and that's because of his record. So that's just one of the examples as we move forward. For our repeat violent offender intervention initiative, we have 20 candidates, and 11 of those individuals are associated to the Kamloops proper. And we are a hub here. So all the services are here. Individuals come into our community in Kamloops and they do commit crimes. We have them from outside of this community as well. So recently, we'll speak to our fourth quarter. We were able to link an offender to 5 new break-ins in our business areas. And we're forwarding charges and recommendations on 2 of those. We didn't draw the line, and a search warrant was executed at the subject's residence, and the individual didn't return, and they fled to the Surrey area. And we liaised with Surrey Property Crime Unit, intelligence-based policing, these offender management, and we had efforts to get that offender in custody. And we have additional multiple break-in enters. So in our community that we're seeking charges on. So these are multi-jurisdictional that have traveled through a lot of our rural communities as well as our municipal. And our CompStat, prolific offender management, intelligence-based policing. We have 4 crime analyst positions within the municipality Kamloops. They provide information on hotspots, high-risk offenders, and how we can work in collaboration to proactively target them. And they're not just limited to the municipality. This is actually a very well run detachment with respect to that. Prior to my time, I'm big on intelligence-based policing, and we can be very proactive, and that those are municipal employees that provide a service on our CompStat model as well as our prolific offender model. So the crime reduction unit example is we provided information with respect to us having 16 offenders. If they get long-term incarcerations, we just don't say that they're in custody. We look at, do we move them to a monitor list and work with our external stakeholders for when they come out on a reintegration strategy, or do we stand up on these individuals from the time they get out of jail? So this is just for the last quarter. We've had this unit in place since September 2023. We started with 2 officers into it. We're up to 4 officers and a corporal with our strategic plan and increasing our frontline policing. We've increased that with an additional officer last year, and then that's one of the positions that are going to be funded this year. We need to keep our foot on the gas, focus on these primary individuals who commit offenses. So 6 of these offenders are in custody and 2 are serving intermittent sentences. And just since September of 2023, that basically prolific offenders were involved in 87 investigations in some way. We recommended charges against 1 prolific offender 11 times. And just to give you some context, charges are associated with property crimes, violent crimes, and 6 other criminal offenses. So those could be breaches of conditions where we will keep our foot on the gas with it. So we have our crime reduction unit, our Kamloops at-risk team, and our target enforcement unit and our general duty. So they focus on all these types of offenders. We have operational plans. Our target enforcement unit is a large unit with respect to that, where we focus on high-level drug traffickers that are providing illicit drugs to our community. We've recently, in the last 8 months, made a large seizure of multi-kilo levels of fentanyl and cocaine, firearms, as well as body-worn armor. We keep continuing to work on those individuals through the charge recommendation process. We're optimistic to be able to release some names in the future. And we have, our team has done an exceptional job on that. We just haven't had the charges approved yet. And we're going to continue to focus on that level. So that's completely separate from our crime reduction unit, our frontline officers. Our Kamloops at-risk team, we have a missing person coordinator. We have our street enforcement, our street intervention team, which is a 3-person, works closely with our community service officers, our crime trends throughout the downtown core, and they've been essential on rounding up individuals with outstanding warrants that have been prolonged on the system or have left the community and come back to the community. We focus on operational plans, not only with our general duty, but also our specialized units. We've just implemented an admissible patron program where we focus on individuals. We have a number of liquor establishments and nightclubs signed up where individuals that are involved in drug trafficking, violence, or gang members, and we do not have a gang challenge here, but we have the authority to go in, eject them from these premises where our security or staff don't have to say, oh, can you ask them to leave? Basically, and then basically they could receive pressure at a local level after the police are gone. So we have a comprehensive program with that, and that's part of our proactive approach. We focus on our CDSA, that's our Controlled Drug and Substance Act traffickers, those that are trafficking right even down to the front line of individuals that have individuals that use in public areas or restricted areas, because we are bound with respect to enforcing in public areas right now with respect to decriminalization and the use of illicit drugs up to 2.5 grams. So just Thank you. Again, working closely with our teams and our crime reduction unit, our frontline officers, as well as our Crown Council and our probation, sheriffs, correctional officers. We look at intelligence-based policing, being proactive on those offenders that are gonna recommit in our communities. We still look at wraparound services, providing them to try and get into a lifestyle of non-criminality, or if they have a number of demands or resources that need to support their habits. But at the same time, we work on our hotspots, and our job is to focus on these offenders when they're out. Some of them, we focus on them right out of the gate, and we go meet with them and we explain to them, as well as we work on the reintegration strategy with our probation and corrections team. Some of the engagement I have with Crown Council and our operations officer and team as we look at those priority offenders. We now have the repeat violent intervention initiative, as I spoke about, and it's not just police-led. Our prolific offender program is police-led. This is a collaborative approach working with corrections, so we focus on them. Priority offenders, those are new offenders that come into our community and commit crimes that may be from other jurisdictions, or all of a sudden we have an individual that's gone from no criminality, then starts committing minor offenses, then escalating to more serious offenses. So we try to be a bit proactive. We look at bail packages and show causes, comprehensive bail packages where we work with Crown Council to outline primary, secondary, and tertiary grounds and focus on individuals, and how we can put the best product forward in evidence, in whether it's individual that's placed on judiciary conditions or held by the courts. As well as under the REVOA program, they have a Crown Council that has been dedicated to that offender, even if that offender moves. So it's not being passed through multiple officers, or it's not being passed through multiple Crown Council. So that seems to be very effective so far. Under our REVOI, 6 of our REVOI candidates assigned to the Kamloops area are actually in custody, and 2 more are in supervised treatment right now at this time. So it's still in its infancy, and we will see how that goes ahead. We continue to focus on our fail to appears conditions and individuals, if they don't attend court or they don't abide by their conditions. We look at curfew conditions. We focus on properties here that are known to be the criminal element. And we work with the municipality when a property is deemed, and we actually, in some instances, seek the cost of policing back when a property has become a nuisance property, and we continue to focus on them. Again, some of the addresses we look at with Crown Council: nuisance properties, electronic monitoring program under the corrections. If an offender is released, an individual that has multiple or has curfews, instead of multiple checks, sometimes electronic monitoring program is imposed by the courts, and that allows us, if a person leaves a certain area, that then we can respond. So it's quite effective, because some of the offenders that are under curfew conditions that are so high risk, we need to check them multiple times a shift and ensure that they're compliant, because the public interest is there. And a lot of that falls down to our on the backs of our crime reduction unit, and more so our general duty policing that works 24/7 here. Again, the prolific offender management program and our CompStat model, where we communicate offenders, prioritize our offenders, and the hotspots and crime areas within our geographical regions. So these are just some of our crime statistics to kind of outline in our last quarter. When I say rural, that would be the Kamloops detachment region. We've seen some reductions in the areas that you've seen, and you can see that in Q4 2022, we had some heightened levels, especially around our theft of motor vehicles. So you can see our theft of motor vehicles and increases and decreases there. We've looked at some programs here. We've had our impact team up, which focuses on stolen vehicles, our crime reduction team. We brought in our uniform gang enforcement team throughout the region a couple times, just to put a constant pressure and be proactive so that we can focus on individuals. There's quite a comparison here with respect to rural detachment as well as city detachment. Some of the offenders are into the rural area and back and forth. So like I say, the crime doesn't stop right at that bridge and has tentacles out into your community and vice versa. So some of our overall crime stats, you can see that we've had a 13% decrease. This is Kamloops City specifically in crimes against person, a 12% decrease in our property crime. Our Controlled Drugs and Substance Act is a substantial decrease because we did not charge in many instances for possession of a controlled substance. And then when decriminalization coming forward, then again, it's now, we're going to have a significant drop because it's not an offense to possess up to 2.5 grams. However, if we have a multitude of serious offenses and the person's in possession, we do have some opportunity to charge with respect to that. So we've had some great success in reducing some of our property, our persons, as well as increasing on our traffic violations with the increase of our traffic unit as well, being up to staff. So this is our rural statistics. As you can see, each quarter there, roughly rural receives close to 4,000 files a year, calls for service, just under 4,000 calls for service, whereas the municipality is this year we're just under 46,000 calls for service. So it just kind of gives you a little bit of a dynamic there. So they've had a little bit of an increase on persons, and that could be due to displacement. And we do focus on what their stats are because we don't want to be displacing somebody into our rural communities and that we're focusing on locally. We want to hold them to account if they're committing crimes, no matter what the policing jurisdiction is. And if it goes into our smaller communities, sometimes we engage with those commander and operations to say, you need to focus on this individual. Here's all our information. And we meet with these offenders and we explain to some of them that they will be subject to targeting if they continue a life of crime. And we work with our partners to look at intervention strategies as well. So substantial decrease in crimes against property. That was some of the offenders that were in our Kamloops rural area as well as our city area, and they were back and forth, especially the stolen vehicles. It doesn't take much to cross over between city and rural. And again, you may have seen a recent news release. We just took down another stolen vehicle, was in the rural area and stolen from the city side in short order. And one of our officers actually was rammed, and we basically were able to get him into custody. Our officer was not seriously hurt, and we take those offenses very serious and work with our Crown Counsel. And the individual had outstanding warrants from another policing jurisdiction as well as ours, and continues to be held in custody. So overall, this is a comparison of our actual stats for Q4, comparing the last 4 years. Q4 is our September to December in the calendar year for the municipality. However, with the RCMP, it's Q3 because the RCMP works April to April, but we focus on our statistics for each of our city and rural. So you can see sometimes there is a little bit of an increase in rural when there's a decrease to the city and in the comparisons, and that's in our crimes against persons. Our property, we've had a decrease in each of the areas, 11% in the city, as well as 4% in our rural area, and then our other criminal code violations. So those could be breaches or a number of types of others. And part of that is where we're being proactive in our enforcement as well. When we get more officers and we get more proactive enforcement, some of the statistics can increase with respect to that when we start to put a pressure on it. Overall, you have the grand totals of what kind of file counts or what kind of crime rates that you see for all those areas. So again, just this is a breakdown of specific persons statistics, and we have our persons offenses may include robbery, assault with a weapon, assault, aggravated assault, firearm discharge. I really focus on breaking those down individually when we have crimes, when we say persons crimes, so that we can say, okay, what are the most serious crimes and how do we prioritize offender management and those responsible for inciting violence within our communities? As you've heard, that's one of our main priorities. And we've had some successes of reduction throughout the city. But when you look at the actual rural, that we are looking at trying to gain public confidence with respect to reporting crimes as well, so that we capture unreported. But we also are looking at increasing establishments on both sides with more officers. This is just a sample of an offender. It's a little bit dated, but I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of insight with respect to how our police officers work. And this is an offender. Obviously, we can't disclose the individual, but this is an offender in their late 20s, had 270 documented police files throughout multiple regions. When we say Southeast District, mainly Kamloops, I'll be frank. And the offender's history spans over 11 years, and they had 147 charges laid against them, of which they were convicted of 42 offenses and was released or global pleas or stays on 122 offenses. So this gives you an idea of what our officers are working on with an offender when we say a priority or prolific offender. When you average out this offender, they come in contact with our law enforcement every 12 days over the span of just 10 years. So that shows some of our high-risk offenders. I'm not talking a couple investigations here or a couple charges, but it shows very high levels. So, and then I can break down the areas. This is an example, what type of offense. This offender, 18% was violence, 13% driving. So that could be prohibited driving, motor vehicle act offenses, 10% drugs. 19% was FTC is our failed to comply. And then 20% is others. So that could be a whole array of different types of files that may not necessarily be criminal. Negative roll codes means they may be a subject of a complaint or a suspect, just not the evidence isn't there to charge them. And then obviously with respect to 20% being property crimes. So this is just a sample so you could see. Again, just experience demonstrated that a number of criminals are responsible for the majority of crimes. That's why we have our crime reduction strategy that blends over into other police jurisdictions. We have work within our hub, and we actually, each detachment has a delegated individual to information share so that we can focus on offender management, even into the smaller communities. Our prolific offenders are usually involved in a wide variety of crimes. As you see, you've seen samples there. That's what we put there. So this is where our opportunity is to ensure that we have ongoing communication with you to help build awareness of our principles on our repeat or prolific offender management and then our intervention programs. So with that being said, we're able to advocate and focus on where we need change or where we need to enhance our abilities or our strategic priorities or our resources. With that being said, I open it up to any questions that you may have, and I thank you for this opportunity.
All right, thank you very much. All right, could everyone put those hands up again, please? You were too quick putting them down. I've got Director Sow, Houghton, Blackwell, Stamer, Middleton. All right, Director Sow, you get to lead off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I got two questions. One, since I'm representing electoral area unincorporated communities, when you mentioned your team works with municipalities, do they have equivalent programs with unincorporated areas? And if so, do you work with TNRD staff on that, or who's your contact point there? Oh, question one, yeah.
Madam Chair to Director, yeah, number of questions there. So my main contact with the TNRD has been Chief Administrator Officer here to my right, as everyone knows, Mr. Hildebrand. And again, this is the opportunity where we can open these lines of communications, given the overlap. I only represent Kamloops and the Kamloops rural area, but there's opportunities also to bridge that with other detachment commanders. Being from the area, I'm passionate about it. Now, for actually the congruency with respect to what you're talking about, Are there other programs into those municipalities? Some of the provincial detachments, as we call it, when it's under 5,000 population community, they don't have these specialized units. They have the resources of there's contractual obligations under provincial policing services agreements for our FIS forensics, for our police dog services. There's also a regional general investigation section, plain clothes, for the smaller provincial detachments that provide that service. But our municipality does expand out in and provide support where necessary, and there are provisions to release to it. We try to be centric in the city, and in the rural areas, absolutely, we are strictly reactive on some of these. I'm going to be frank with that, with some of our crime because of the resource complements, and I can't speak for other provincial detachments, but I've managed multiple provincial detachments as well as a hybrid detachment of municipal and provincial, as well as most recently here being a municipal detachment. So I do see the demands and demographics of each area that are unique, and our crime reduction unit does provide a service into each of the areas, meaning just into Kamloops, but we have expanded if they're committing crimes through three as we call police of jurisdictions, and we can focus on them and reduce the crime not only in Kamloops and hold these offenders accountable, then we will.
Thank you very much for that. Second question, and I understand it might not be your department, but BC Highway Patrol, do they have similar strategies using offense data? For example, I really like how you mentioned that, you see certain crimes going up, then, you spend more officers there. Are you aware if BC Highway Patrol also does similar? Okay, we have more accidents due to maybe speeding and whatnot, criminal factors. We'll dedicate more officers into that region. Do you know if they do something similar like that?
Madam Chair to Director. Yeah, I'm very familiar with our BC Highway Patrol, their metrics, their crash data. They shared it with us recently this week, and where they focus on an enforcement presence. However, they assist us on some of the collisions. We're responsible through our policing jurisdictions, and unless it's criminal in nature out of the gate, we hold those investigations, but we also have joint operations with our CBSE. I have a municipal traffic unit that also works the corridor here and will work occasionally in partnership with BC Highway Patrol, but they are a separate entity, not under my purview, but they provide a service through our highways throughout the province or the corridor where they're positioned. And if I'm not mistaken, there's approximately 34 positions based out of Kamloops that police throughout the corridor into all our provincial areas. We share operational plans with them, our larger events, and they do come out and assist us where need be through that corridor. But we also have to focus on the crashes that are throughout our corridor, and we own those investigations.
Thank you. Director Houghton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation, sir. I just want to talk a little bit about a position. I don't believe it was mentioned here, but I think it's very important to rural British Columbia that you folks have in the rural detachment, and that's the livestock superintendent and Corporal Corey Lepine. I know both BC Cattlemen's and Livestock Identification Agency in British Columbia has worked hard to secure that position and work with you folks. And I know during COVID, Corporal Lepine was restationed in Ashcroft. I believe he's back in the office on the rural detachment. And I just want to, on behalf of all the people in the rural parts of the riding, that Corporal Lepine does a great job. He walks the walk, he talks the talk, and with with the amount of theft that's going on today with the price of livestock, Corey's out there in all four corners. He's a one person show, and I just want to pass along that as far as rural BC goes, we want to see that position secured and, if anything, maybe expanded on. So I just want to pass that on. Thank you.
Madam Chair to Director Houghton, very acknowledged. I know Corporal Lepine very well. He was currently under the Kamloops detachment but he had been relocated to our Kamloops Southeast District building, reporting directly to the district. So he's not under my purview. We still work with him very well. We worked with him when he was in Ashcroft. And I can't echo enough that it is a one-person show and very valued. And I will certainly convey that back along to his necessary reporting line to the district where I report to and work closely with.
Thank you. Yes, we were very fortunate to have Corporal Lapine, acting detachment commander in Ashcroft for Ashcroft Cache Creek, and real stand-up guy. Really was sorry. Our loss was livestock's gain. Let's put it that way. I hope the livestock appreciates it. Director Blackwell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through to you, to our guest. I could talk about highway patrol all day, but I'm gonna focus on something that might be more in your wheelhouse. Big concern, and it comes up all the time, is rural drug trafficking enforcement. And what are the challenges behind that? Where my neighborhood, which is beyond my municipal limits, we seem to see generational drug dealers. They're the same people that, we know them by name. We actually see them retire and somebody take over their business. And now that the rather large infrastructure project has left our area, the proceeds of these businesses seem to be being invested in legitimate businesses. What are the challenges, especially when everybody seems to know everybody in these small towns and rural and dealing with these issues?
Madam Chair, to Director Blackwell, with respect to drug traffickers, I hear what you're saying with generational. I've seen it. I grew up in this area. Some of the base offenders that were starting out or entrenched when I was here 20 years ago are still active. They know we're focusing on them. We have a dedicated unit. Our recent unit is continuing to focus and not limit just within the lines of our municipality, but where they are providing or trafficking drugs, and we continue to work on it as well. So with respect to that, we have what we have is a number of funding lines with respect to our provincial tactical enforcement program, and some of our smaller detachments are utilizing that funding and utilizing the intelligence-based policing. It's going to take some time, and I look forward to some future announcements on some progresses, especially with some recent seizures once we have charges. But again, we will not let up with respect to these offenders. These drug traffickers and individuals associated to violence right down to the front line remain one of our priorities, and we work closely with a lot of individuals in the outlying communities. And I do know your concern there, sir.
Director Stamer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I had a whole bunch. I was getting a little bit boiled up on a couple of things that you mentioned, so I'll leave it to two. Number one, and thanks very much for being here. Barrier has 4 full-time officers, as you're well aware of. In the area that our officers have to patrol is a fairly large geographical, over to Bonaparte, down the other side of West Side, Vinsula, Upper Heffley Creek, all the way up to Brennan Creek and in between. And as Mayor Blackwell alluded to, they also have to fill in for some of the gaps on the BC Highway Patrol. They've also informed me that their file caseloads are significantly higher per member than a lot of the other detachments. So I want to know if that's true. And what is the RCMP going to do with some of this downloading that seems to be occurring when you start adding up all those extra areas of enforcement that, say, 10 or 15 years ago, number one, you didn't have to spend as much time on them. And number two, you didn't have this prolific offender that I'd like to come into question number 2 on. So what is the RCMP going to be doing with this increased file load? And how are we going to be able to attack, that so that we still have, we're still able to adequately police our highways? We're still able to respond to a call in a reasonable fashion. What are the things that you can do about that?
Madam Chair, to Director, with respect to barrier, I understand the demands there. I understand the officer, so I acknowledge that. With respect to it, not necessarily my police of jurisdiction. However, again, offender management, we had an offender into your community from here. We worked very hard and your officers were instrumental in us being successful with this recent targeting. And again, we have some charges on offenders, some charges we were not successful, but continuing to advocate as a local government up through the district advisory NCO, and there is a constant assessment of criminal code per caseload into our provincial detachments, our municipal detachments. There are resource discussions and business cases need to be advocated and put forward for any FTE increases through the detachment commander and the advisory NCO that reports to our district officer. I don't have the empirical data for your specific policing jurisdiction, and I do note that, and I will bring that back forward when we do have our district meetings with respect to concerns as well as engagement with local governments.
Thanks for that. And my second question revolves around the prolific offender program. And I find it striking that you have full-time officers on these files. You're one example of offender A, with all the previous crimes that have been committed. So it's a two-part question, you know, is offender A ever going to be able to stop committing crimes? And number two, is it the Attorney General or the Solicitor General's responsibility to start making sure that these crimes that are being reoffended, the penalties are being applied the way they were interpreted and put on the books in the first place, so that we're not constantly chasing these people around knowing full well they are not going to be rehabilitated. And instead of spending all these resources specifically on this program, why aren't we spending them somewhere else and doing something significant with these people?
Madam Chair to Director, I do agree with you that it has to be a multi-pronged approach. We will not let up on the enforcement. We have frustrations with individuals that are repeatedly released or do not receive lengthy sentences or released on bail with repeated a list of charges or outstanding conditions. But through advocation with bail for reform and how we continue to focus on that, is one aspect, but our units are not going to let up with respect to it. We've had challenges of offenders being released with repeated warrants and back into the court system. However, our resources aren't taken into account for that. And again, we're going to continue to focus with respect to each offender and where they're committing crimes throughout our region.
Thank you. Just I was interested in that question as well with the example you gave of offender A. Is this basically his job for life and there is no hope? I mean, it's an honest question because you see these statistics. Is this what he is going to do for the rest of their life? And there's no hope of ever rehabilitating, if that's the Shawshank Redemption word for it? I don't know. I mean, honestly, is there?
Well, Madam Chair, we've had some success with some offenders, but we've had less with others. And we have offenders that are more serious than that and also less serious. And each offender is managed on a case-by-case basis. And absolutely, some offenders commit a number of crimes as soon as they get out. And again, like I say, there's a core group of offenders that are responsible for a large number of our crimes. And that's why we have this program. That's why we have our team. And we continue to advocate through obviously the management of offenders with accountability and trying to get lengthier sentences. Absolutely. Some offenders need to actually be in jail long-term, I'm going to say that, and rehabilitation start from the inside out. Some, we are having some successes into some of the treatment programs, but we have the same frustrations amongst our officers on the front line on the perpetual cycle with some of our repeat offenders.
Director Middleton, then I have Directors Sarai, Smith, and Getz.
Through the chair, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. My question is just regarding the stats were on, and in the one slide that was up on, you know, reductions of certain areas of crime within, so I'll speak to the city, rural, didn't change too much, but when we see some of these reductions, is it actually a reduction or is it a reduction in reporting? I sort of get a sense that perhaps businesses and individuals in the community have given up on reporting because they don't think it's going to change anything. I'm talking about, broken windows, graffitis and vandalism, that sort of thing. So I guess crimes against properties and perhaps vehicle break-ins where a window's broken, nothing of significance was taken from the vehicle. What am I going to report? Why bother? Pay the deductible on my insurance, get my window fixed. So is some of this reduction, it doesn't quite line up with what we hear by way of email and news media and so forth about what's actually going on out there.
Madam Chair, to Director Middleton, with respect to it, some reductions could very well be that. But as we have a team that focuses on our offenders, we have some offenders that we are able to say they've been responsible for a number of offenses or increasing certain percentages. And then when we have them in custody or a number of them in custody, we do see a reduction. There's some this week. I expect that we were going to see some of our increases on break and enter to businesses absolutely go down, given a couple of offenders we know have been responsible for. We do see some individuals frustrated. We do, so that's, I can't really speak to the unreported, but it's always a concern, and we want to get out and show some of our successes and gain some of that public trust as well. We work closely, as you know, with our community service officers and crime prevention teams to get out there and look at that aspect as well, to gain not that trust, but on how they can protect their properties and engage from a management perspective. But at the same time, we do see extreme frustrations with it. We have some people that are very complimentary, and then we have individuals that are frustrated when they've reported a number of offenses and not had success. So I think it's important that we have that multi-pronged approach and really focus on the data that we have with respect to criminal intelligence, where offenders are driving them up, and those are metrics we can capture while we continue to engage with those that may be frustrated. And we encourage people to report the crimes. We can't make them report the crimes, and we've had some online reportings for minor property offenses. As you know, now we have the online crime reporting as well. So we do see some increases in those areas as well. Thank you.
Director Sarai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Superintendent Pelly, for that report. Couple of questions on each end of the spectrum on policing. The first one is that prolific offender. Is it in your opinion, is there addiction or mental health, or is it just crimes of opportunity? Like if there's some addiction issue to it, I think you mentioned a couple of offenders got mandatory treatment. I'm curious of how that came about, because I can see on the streets of Kamloops, there's a lot of individuals that could use mandatory treatment. So I'm just wondering, are prolific offenders have an underlying addiction problem that is making them do this, or is it just crimes of passion?
Madam Chair, to Director Sarai, we do have opportunities, crimes of opportunity. Absolutely. That's where we look at our educational piece. But these prolific offenders or priority offenders we look at, you've seen samples where they've been in a life of crime. And we do look at the intervention methods. The treatment, those are court-ordered treatment where individuals have been released to treatment facilities and must reside while they're going into, while they're in treatment. So each is case specific, but repeat offenders usually have a multitude of underlying issues, and it's case dependent. We see offenders with mental health, addiction issues, and homelessness as a culmination, and some no as well, like that that don't have those factors. So again, not to give you a concrete answer, but be obviously clear, is we do see a culmination of underlying root issues, and some of them have started very young, or some of them may be starting in the, their mid-20s or later in life, and we try to examine why there's a shift to those crimes and really work with our community stakeholders and partners, whether it's mental health, housing, our corrections, and look at intervention programs, but we will not let off on the enforcement of these individuals that continue to victimize our communities.
Supplemental. My second question was on
TNRD area directors, we all have First Nation neighbors. And I'm just wondering, we had a sensitive issue here this past summer on our riverbank. Is it on each detachment to have Indigenous cultural training, or is that something that's been provided at Depot before a member comes out and serves in a community that has First Nations as neighbors?
Madam Chair to Director Sarai. There is some training received. However, each one is dependent throughout the communities. We have an Indigenous Policing Services unit with Tecumloops. Our municipal members, some of them do rotational aspects into our Indigenous communities. We are engaged with the Indigenous communities and our community tripartite agreements, as well as letters of expectation. There's a strong cultural component to it. You may have seen recently there's been workshops and cultural workshops with respect to drum making. That was not just limited to within Tecumloops detachment. Tecumloops detachment has some very admirable officers who provided some of those cultural aspects, and as well as working with the local leadership, and did educational pieces, not just to our officers in the municipality, but also right to our municipal staff all partaking. So it's a constant occurrence, and we continue to support that as we move forward in bridging our relationships and reconciliation throughout our communities. And our Indigenous communities are very engaged with us with respect to support on individuals that commit crimes in their community as well.
Director Smith.
Yeah, Director Smith, Area E, Bonaparte Plateau. I'm just wondering how I can better explain to the residents when they hear the famous phrase "known to police," exactly, what effect that has on the actions that are being done. Right now, we've got a situation where we've got, I feel, a couple of prolific offenders who apparently are known to, and we're covered out of the Clinton detachment, by the way. So it's a half hour away. I realize that for response time and that, but like for instance, our Eco Depot in 70 Mile House is being broken into basically weekly. And it is an Eco Depot and it's not public, nobody's being hurt, but they're to the point now where they don't even lock the gate because they just cut the lock anyway. So, and the conversations that the operators had with the detachment has been, yeah, we think we know who it is, but that's basically, it seems like that's where it ends. And just to the point now where the residents are talking about putting a little group together and dealing with it themselves in the way of some sort of a stakeout situation. And so, it's just, there doesn't seem to be the phrase "known to police," I think just aggravates the situation because it's not stopping.
Madam Chair to Director, I understand what you're saying. I worked in 100 Mile House for 4.5 years, so that 83-mile police of jurisdiction, we did work closely with neighboring detachments. A lot of those detachments are not 24-hour policing, as you know, on call. I do think criminals may take advantage of those times. Our general duty frontline officers are making the crime prevention recommendations, how you can protect your property, but also the known to police aspect. Those are benefits of smaller communities. We all know so-and-so is this life of crime, so-and-so is this life of crime. And often it's a matter of getting investigations and evidence, and partnerships, if they're throughout multiple jurisdictions, are very key. But at the same time, I know that when I was up north in Williams Lake, we had a smaller outlying rural community, and those neighborhood watches are very effective if they're educated, strategic, as well as some of them had their own social media platform with it and reporting. They know when there's suspicious vehicles into those areas. They know when somebody's new to the neighborhood. So the known to police, yes, absolutely. Your officers that become part of your community and get to know a lot of the individuals, continue to most likely focus on them, and it's a matter of getting the evidence or not, and they have to be strategic with respect to that. Our prolific offenders, we continue to focus on them, and some of them go into communities up north and vice versa, but I can't really speak to actually the operational metrics that your specific detachment is doing, but I know that from my perspective, what they are likely doing. And they are trying to focus on those individuals, trying to create prevention, engaging with community groups, neighborhood watches, probably video surveillance, those things. And it gets more and more challenging into the rural isolated areas. 70 Mile, up Deca Lake, all those, you and I both know, then all of a sudden in the spring, you get the seasonal property hits. And people have broken into a number of homes, and it's usually a core group. So that's where intelligence-based policing really comes into play, whether it's a traveling set of criminals or not. And again, it's anecdotal, but at the same time, I know your concern, and have to work with the local leadership as well as detachment and detachment commander for strategies. And sometimes they're able to increase a bit of a presence or be strategic into areas and get a resolve, but not always the case. So I understand what you're saying, sir.
Thank you.
Director Getz.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. Got a question on provincial PTEP, Provincial Tactical Emergency Priority. In Merritt in 2022, we had 8 days of basically kidnapping, drugs, gun violence. We had to have houses breached by the SWAT team or PTEP team. One of the questions that I brought to Minister Farnsworth here at UBCM is the funding model of how to get PTEP in your community. I think it's open for like 12 days in March and then it's gone. And the way that PTEP works is that you make an application guessing something might happen in your community. And if it doesn't, then the money is not used, but nobody else is allowed to apply during that time. Trying to get that changed where it would be working on a needed as basis. What's your view on PTEP, and have you had much use with it? Or I just find it's very frustrating that you apply for it guessing that something might happen in your community. I don't think it's a good funding model the way they have it set up.
Madam Chair to Director Getz, I understand what you're saying. They do multiple call outs throughout the year. You can actually apply for historical funding, so some of those deployments as well. Their ERT team, the Uniform Gang Enforcement Team came up very familiar with that incident. We provided investigators and our team as well to go out and support on that for their constant pressure, being the closest unit as well with a larger capacity. But that PTEP funding can be utilized to start projects if you have the resource complement on high-risk offenders, if they're a provincial tactical enforcement program offender. If you've had a past incident that was funded through your municipal lines, you can actually seek the recovery of that, and they do a number of call-outs. And it's not only just for PTEP funding, or not just for PTEP on investigations, but with respect to equipment as well. So it does come out, and you can go retroactive, because that's the challenge, like you say, is even if court is coming up, you can seek those where need be, because you don't have a crystal ball. But if you want to focus on some offenders and you have an operational plan, you can put that forward. It goes April to April is my understanding. And then recently in the last month and a half, they asked if you wanted to submit additionals, because I think a lot of places where they allocate funding, they have some funding left over and they do want to utilize that before fiscal year end.
So just so people understand, we are going for historical funding, but you have to put the money up first and then try and claw it back, and it can become expensive. And then sometimes they just say no.
Thank you. One more question, quick one. He promises, from Director Stamer, but I just want to follow up. It's a question I had from earlier, but Director Smith touched on it. One of the reasons I've heard that Kamloops is attractive to a certain population of people is because it's easy to get to. It's on several major highways from all parts of the province. Conversely, do you see that happening with people from Kamloops taking advantage of the highway network to go out to communities like Barrier, Chase, Cache Creek, Merritt, which are directly on these major highways? Do you see many frequent flyers up and down these corridors?
Madam Chair, with respect to being a larger center, it's more, I find that there are more individuals coming into the city, just given the opportunity and the services. I just want to be clear that we have no evidence of individuals being bussed into this community, but to put some of those rumors to arrest. But again, there's crimes of opportunity. Some of them may have root issues back out into the smaller communities, want to get back to the smaller communities. We see all different individuals. So with respect to it, we do see individuals coming from multiple different communities into our community or started here as well. So it's really case by case. I don't have any data or intelligence to say that we have a core group of offenders from this community X coming into Kamloops or this community, meaning Kamloops going into Merritt. There's usually community ties or some association with individuals they know there.
And just for the record, no, I do not believe that anyone is being bussed into anywhere, because if the rumors are true, then every community in BC is having multiple busloads of people arriving in the dead of night. And that's not happening. Director Steamer, I'm going to give you the last word.
Yes, thanks very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. We had a discussion before earlier in the season about the opportunity of having a full-time traffic analysis RCMP officer in Kamloops, particularly when we have serious and fatal crashes on our highways, notwithstanding that we want, the job to be done properly, the investigation to be done properly, but the logistical challenges of having a member either in Kelowna and Chilliwack can add additional 2, 3, 4 hours to the amount of time that our highways are closed, and knowing that we don't have adequate detours for many of our traffic, including commercial vehicles on those detour routes. Do you have a full-time traffic analysis professional in Kamloops now?
Madam Chair, to Director Stammer, we do not at Kamloops Municipal. There used to be a position up on the Southeast District. I have the same concerns, and it is a topic of mine that is going to be brought forward because of some of fatalities that we are having challenges with respect to responses, but we have had some positions up on the hill filled. I don't have that right in front of me, and we've had some immediate responses in the city when they've been out here, even with some of our fatalities in the municipality. But I note your concern with respect to some of the rural areas, the commute time, and I don't have a firm answer for you, but I will get that and within our meetings next week and respond back to you, because I just want to know about that myself with the consistent application, because yes, there is sometimes, and then yes, no, there isn't.
Thank you for that.
All right. Thank you very much, Superintendent Pelly, for coming today.
Thank you.
Don't be a stranger in Ashcroft Cache Creek.
At all.
All right, next up, we have our External Relations and Advocacy Advisor, Mr. Corbin Kelly, to do a report on SILGA and UBCM preparation.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and through to the committee. Attached in the report is a letter from the Southern Interior Local Government Association. There's a number of key dates in there. A call for nominations for the 2024 executive. I will leave that up to the board in terms of who they want to nominate, if anyone. The priority for this report and what I'm hoping to seek feedback from the committee here today is the deadline for resolutions to SILGA is February. I'm just trying to find the exact date here. Yeah, February 29th. Thank you, Director Stamer. Happens to be a leap year. So so February 29th. And so, in order to be able to present resolutions to UBCM, they have to go through SILGA first. So certainly wanting to open up for recommendations in term and to work with directors and the board in terms of if there are any resolutions that we would like to take to SILGA and UBCM. And then the other thing is in preparation for UBCM wanting to start early. We had a number of meetings at UBCM with different ministers and different staff from different ministries. And we want to get an idea of what advocacy priorities we're going to have for UBCM 2024. And making sure that we're starting that advocacy early, and similar likely to the process that we did last year, where staff was meeting with senior leadership from those ministries at a staffing to staff or a staff to staff level prior to directors meeting with ministers. So that's the purpose of my report today, is to seek feedback, on if there's any resolutions that the board would like to take to SILGA, and in any way that I might be able to support that. And then the second would be advocacy priorities for UBCM. So happy to take questions or feedback or
Okay,
ideas.
I've got Director Grenier, Director Sarai, Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Corbin. I'm just wondering, since we've now had the letter back from the minister on the utilities, and they've encouraged us to talk some more, maybe we should be elevating this up through UBCM, the Small Utilities Assistance Fund, or whatever we want to call it. But it seems to me that we want to get that on the UBCM floor at the same time as we carry on with our direct conversations, wherever that is. But you're having the direct conversation, so I don't know if that's appropriate.
Thank you, Chair. I can just respond to that. I think it is definitely appropriate. I think as much pressure we can apply through SILGA and UBCM could always help. And I feel that if we come together with a resolution or an idea that can get supported by other regional districts, because it's going to be the regional districts as a whole that'll have the biggest weight, which will then maybe allow that to move forward within that ministry from a budget item for 2025 provincially.
And Director Sarai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that opportunity. I think with Director Stamer and myself being on the board, executive board, last year was a very good year of presenting to the ministers in UBCM, not only from the city side, but TNRD. It was the topics were almost bang on, and we were putting the pressure where it was needed. I think I agree with Director Grenier on this. Rogers and TELUS letting us down in the last little while. It could be a piece that other RDOs are also facing. And there was an opportunity last year that Kamloops co-sponsored a resolution with Kelowna on mental health. I believe it was a topic. So I think all of us could have an opportunity to maybe look at what is important in your area and send it to staff and see if there's some common concerns and use that as a resolution, and then reach out to other RDOs and see if that's also a concern in them and either co-sponsor to SILGA. The more interest and the more concern it has, and you can magnify it, SILGA is very open to taking resolutions forward. We are the Southern Interior Local Government Association. You are a big part of it. And I think one concern in one area, I can probably guarantee you, and Robin, or Director Smith sat on it as well. In SILGA, one issue in one area usually affects someone downstream or upstream the same way. So I think if we all put our heads together and get some common concern and send that forward to SILGA, I think that would be a win.
Thank you, Chair Roden. Just on building on that comment, I think the comment about coming up with themes would be important, because there'd be a lot of things that we could kind of put into those buckets then. I felt like Corbin and our executive assistant last year did a great job of organizing these meetings, and we were very proactive, and we just want to continue to build on that to make sure they know who TNRD are when we are sitting in front of a minister. So we'll continue to build on that. But I think getting those themes from the board or from the committee today would be helpful. And then as individual things come within those buckets, then we could certainly add them in and add them to the list and start building that task to go forward.
Director Houghton.
Just on the political side, do you, Director Stamer and Director Stride, do you have to be renominated again from here, or how does that work?
I've put my name forward for first vice president, as Louise Richmond will be going for president, from what I've been told. So every position is open right now.
Yeah, thanks. And to further that, I'm going to be seeking nomination for director at large again.
If I may, and gentlemen to my right and left, if I'm stepping on your toes, let me know. Something I've heard repeatedly at SILGA and UBCM is, I don't know, for lack of a better term, woolly-headed resolutions that don't really have a specific point or seem to wander or aren't terribly concise or are far too broad or general. So one suggestion I would have is if you have an idea for a resolution, to not only talk with Directors Sarai and Stamer, but also talk with Mr. Kelly, because they will be able to help you craft a resolution that will not get sent back or will not be disregarded because it is too vague, woolly, whatever term you want to use. And I just have heard this a lot at Silga, not so much at UBCM, because much of what comes to UBCM has already been fine-tuned through Silga, if you will, and the other local government associations. And then another thing too, I hear a lot is don't make them hyper specific. They should be not only broad for the TNRD, but have resonance for other regional districts, other local governments as well. A problem that we are facing in the TNRD that other regional districts, other levels of government are also facing, so that we can have that commonality. The more commonalities we can find with other local governments, the more chance we have of getting broad support and advancing into UBCM. So, Director Stamer, then Director Sarai.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. And don't be afraid of putting in a resolution that has possibly either been passed in the past or maybe, or rejected, because a perfect example is highway rescue. I mean, we go way back to, I think, 2011, when we, as a district, petitioned Silga, was accepted unanimously, went to UBCM unanimously for additional highway rescue funding. And I think it's important for all of us in this room to realize that they haven't changed that funding model before and since then. So it's a significant issue to our municipality. I'm sure it's a significant issue to your municipality, particularly outside of your municipal boundaries. And it's something that I think is important enough that, again, it should be brought back to the government's attention that we're not going away. Until you guys make some significant changes, we're going to continue to keep pushing for this. No different than with this Emergency Preparedness Act. I don't think anybody in this room really fully appreciates exactly what's going to happen in the spring when we start figuring out who's responsible for what and the costs that it could be incurred, additional costs to our residents over and above than what they're paying right now. So don't be afraid of putting in a resolution that may have been put in last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Do it again if we have to. And at UBCM, they've talked about streamlining, because unfortunately, I think personally, we have not enough time to be able to go over resolutions. They're talking about possibly limiting one resolution per entity, so that if you're a municipality, you can't have 3, which I think which makes sense, because we just don't physically have enough time to go through it all. But it does carry a lot of weight if you have a resolution that goes through a local government association and then goes to UBCM. You're going to get more weight, not only from UBCM, but also from the government, knowing that you've gone through the process. Then all of a sudden in June or whatever the cutoff date is, say, hey, we'd like a resolution at UBCM. So if you're serious enough about doing it, let's put it through Silga first, then get it to UBCM.
And thank you. Just 1 second. I did hear that last year because we had so many new directors. And saying, okay, well, when should we start doing our resolutions for UBCM? And I absolutely, Director Stamer is quite right. Do them for Silga. I would suspect, I don't know what the figures are, 90 to 95% of the resolutions you see at UBCM have come up through the local government associations. They are not crafted specifically for UBCM, except maybe in the case of an emergent issue that has come up since the local government meetings in the spring. So don't think, oh, well, okay, if I don't get around to it for Silga, I'll just craft a resolution for UBCM. No, so if you have a resolution, work on it for Silga, get it fine-tuned, run it past a bunch of eyes and get it to the local government association, and then it can advance. Director Sarai.
I think I'll just make it brief. What I would hope for, and unfortunately last year I was very busy with the City of Kamloops council meeting with ministers, and I know TNRD met with many ministers and had many important topics for each minister. It'd be refreshing for me to see where we're at with those requests we did to the ministers. Have they been addressed? Have we got anything back? That could be a topic for a resolution. If it's important enough to talk to a minister about and we haven't got anything back, that would be something I would put towards Silga, saying, look, this topic affects all 38 communities, districts, and villages in Silga. We haven't got anything back. We've already asked. that could be a game changer down there.
Director Getz?
I think one thing we have to remember, this is an election year this year. So you're probably going to meet every single person and their grandmother when you go down there because it's an election year. One thing that we plan on doing is also meeting with the opposition. It's one thing we always do in an election year, just so they're aware of who we are and what we're doing. So I would suggest if you have the time, you would be doing the same.
Mr. Kelly?
If I can just add in, when we're talking about wanting to bring resolutions forward, absolutely, wanting to put them through SILGA first is, has been alluded to is probably the best process to follow. The other thing, the cutoff date for resolutions to SILGA is February 29th. Really what they want is for it to be sponsored by the board. So it would need to come to the board as a resolution to be sponsored as a whole. And so then at that point, the cutoff would be February 15th, because that's when the report would need to come to the board as a resolution. And so then in that case, it would actually be the week before that we would need to craft that and have it out to you in the agenda.
Any other questions or comments? No? All right, thank you very much. So let's get working on those resolutions, but not too many. Because we all know how when the regional district of Okanagan-Similkameen comes up with their gazillionth resolution, everyone's kind of rolling their eyes going, oh, them again. How are we doing for time? Do we have time for a 5-minute coffee break? All right, we have time for a 5-minute coffee break, so go grab coffee. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Hope you're all coffeeed up. We are on to item 5.2, official community plan. Never say that we don't talk about exciting stuff at the TNRD. So, Mr. Kraus, tell us all about OCPs, please.
Yes, and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. So our presentation this morning will actually be delivered by our new planning manager, Scott Beeching. So I thought before we begin, this would be a great opportunity to introduce him to the board and to have him speak about a really important topic to us, long-range planning. A little background, Scott comes to us with about 20 years of planning experience, most recently in a municipal setting in Sicamous and Elkford prior to that. And prior to that time, he worked for the Columbia-Shuswap Regional District as a planner for about 8 years, and that's where I first contacted him. We had some connections there, talking as planners from the two regional districts. I think we're really fortunate to have him here, and he brings a wealth of planning knowledge and experience. And not only planning experience, but from a rural context and understanding of that rural context, which I think is really important. But before his head gets too big with the introduction, I'll turn the floor over to him, and then we'll both assist with questions at the end.
Right. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Madam Chair. We have about 8 slides, should take about 10, 15 minutes for us to get through our part and get everybody home to shovel. We have a recommendation, and that's just to consider initiating one or more new official community plan projects in 2024. We're looking for direction from the committee, and we'd like to come back with a budget and a work plan the next time you see us. But yeah, today we're just looking for some direction on where the priority areas are. Can you advance the slide for me? Then the next slide is a map that shows where we do have coverage right now in the TNRD. So the colored areas are the areas that are currently covered by an official community plan. In 2020, an official community plan was adopted for the North Thompson, covering electoral areas A, B, and O. And then the other plan areas, you can see they're much smaller. They're covering more specific areas. At that time when the North Thompson OCP was being formulated, the direction from the board was to expand the coverage and reduce the localized areas of the OCPs. So, ideally, we'd like to see, more areas covered in the colored areas, and that will give us more efficient community plan coverage, and then those policies that would guide the future of the TNRD. So what is an OCP? Good question. We had that one today. And it fits kind of between the regional growth strategy and the zoning bylaws. So the regional growth strategy covers all of the regional district, focuses on the fringe areas and the fringe areas with the other regional districts, but probably more importantly, the fringe areas of the municipalities. So the official community plan should be consistent with that regional growth strategy. The official community plan provides a couple different tools for us. Development permit areas is one, where particularly usually looking at hazardous areas or environmentally sensitive areas, just providing a requirement where someone would have to come and make an application for a permit, and then we could consider that permit with the policies of the official community plan. The official community plan should consider housing, heritage, parks, balancing the environment and the economy. And then when someone comes with a zoning bylaw amendment, we look at the official community plan, and we can give people advice on whether the zoning for that land is appropriate. The regional growth strategy, right now we're looking at probably doing a monitoring report. I believe the board chose not to review it last year, so probably in 2027. The board will consider a review of the regional growth strategy. So this official community plan would be the long range planning in the meantime, and we'll have some other things that feed into the official community plan, the housing needs assessment, and then another document that we look at right now is a South Thompson settlement strategy. So it's really it's a framework and all these documents work together, build on each other. And yeah, as you can see, the official community plan is an important one. Because the 2024 matrix, a little table showing where there is coverage, when they were last updated. So Kamloops North, 1987 was the last time, was when that one was adopted, and last update in 2011. And then we go all the way down to the North Thompson, which is the most recent that was adopted in 2020. You can see some of the higher priority areas: Kamloops North, Kamloops South, South Thompson, Pinnetan. And then, yeah, right down to Green Lake, where there is an update in 2012. So the financial implications, I believe in the 2024 budget, $75,000 has been identified for long-range planning. So that could contribute to the efficiency plan. It's actually really good timing right now, where the regional district was the benefit of a provincial grant, $231,000. That's to help with the housing needs assessment. A lot of the information for that housing needs assessment is really important for the official community plan. So that money can be used to update the housing needs assessment and the official community plan. So the timing is really good. I guess the parts that of the official community plan that are going to require the budget would be the data analysis. So collecting that demographic information. And then there's an opportunity to have a consultant assist with some of that, collecting that information. And then there's planning staff time for the administration and the policy development. There's really 4 parts to an official community plan: the data collection, the consultation, the policies, and the mapping. Probably the data collection is one area that we probably need some outside help with. The policies, we could probably manage that in-house with staff. And then we have the mapping. We have a pretty excellent GIS department that we can handle the mapping. The one big part of this also is going to be the consultation. So the public consultation and then First Nations consultation. So those 2 components are probably going to dictate the timeline of the official community plan. So we feel that 75,000 in 2024 plus the 231,000 is going to be great to get us started. And then there's also just the economies of scale. Well, if we're updating the demographic information for all of the regional district, then we can look at 1, 2, or 3 electoral areas and really focus on those with an official community plan. So the options, so 5 of the 8 OCPs require updating. The board may wish to consider one or more of these options. Whatever option the committee chooses. Our goal, Alex and I, would be to come back with a budget and a work plan, and then present that, and look for direction moving forward. So option 1 would be initiate a new official plan for areas P&L, essentially merging the Kamloops North, Kamloops South, South Thompson, and Pinnetan OCP areas into a single OCP. Again, that would go with the board direction that we received in 2017 to expand the coverage and then reduce the number of OCPs. Another option would be to initiate a new OCP for the Nicola Valley, electorals area M and N, and have a single OCP that covers those areas. A third option would be to look at all the OCPs and initiate housekeeping amendments to all existing OCPs. That's kind of an ongoing thing where you're always looking at CEIF changes depending on where you see applications to things, but yeah, a more fulsome review would also be an option. And again, so yeah, we're here today to look for some direction for the committee to identify some priority areas, and then the goal would be for Alex and I to have a look with that direction, then come back with some recommendations for a work plan, a consultation plan, and a budget.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beeching. All right, I see Director Houghton, Director Laird, and Director Stamer to start us off. Director Houghton.
Thank you for your presentation. I noticed your number 1 priority was looking at merging these area and my area, the electoral areas themselves. And I know we have a river between us. It's really, I don't think that has a lot to do with how the community plan should be done. I mean, the river's there and we have similar needs on both sides. Do you feel like the different areas that you've chosen is a very large, vast area? You know, not just Pritchard on both sides of the river, but you're going up into Pittatan now and down through there and merging into one area. Do you feel they have similar wants and needs to make one community plan versus taking the different electoral areas and just updating them? Does it make more sense for the Thompson-Nicola Regional District to make one solid big plan for the areas that you suggested?
Yeah, just through the chair, well, in my short time here, I think it's become obvious that those are the areas that really there's a lot of growth and a lot of growth pressure. So that's why it might be a good idea to do an fish committee plan for those areas. But also the consultation process, I think looking at an area and just dealing with the different communities in that area, and it will actually probably be some economies of scale through the consultation as well. So those areas seem to be an area of need, and then yeah, we see a little bit of benefit for that consultation process.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Area M and N, I don't know if there's been a minor update, but my OCP is from 1999. You can actually combine area M and N because it's a very small area where there's actually require a little bit more input into the OCP. But I wouldn't mind asking the board if we couldn't include area M and N just to get it started. Because that would actually be two of the electoral areas that would be covered in one OCP. So do I need to ask for support from the board to include area M and N this year, or even just so we get started?
I think that we could do a motion where a proposal is made as to where we want to get started and what we want those OCPs to look like. So if you want to wait and see what else maybe through discussion comes out as a priority, and then we could make one omnibus motion reflecting our wishes.
Thank you.
Director Stamer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just looking at the report. And part of the report talks about the importance of enhancing and maintaining public access to key areas such as waterfront and trails to ensure appropriate management of recreational resources. I would think that also includes some of our resource lakes, areas in there. And again, it comes back to what we chatted about yesterday, in as much as that, someone can come along and redevelop a piece of property. And as long as we don't have a minimum or a maximum square footage in that development process, the developer can pretty much do whatever they want. And unfortunately, that's something that we should be looking at region by region, so that again, we've got examples, particularly at East Barrier Lake, that's had nothing but problems through a lot of this redevelopment process because we didn't have ways of trying to keep the original concepts from expanding. And now that we've got an OCP in Area O, that's kind of a moot point. But I think there's going to be other areas within the regional district that I think we would really like to have a closer look at. And it seems like staff is very reluctant to be able to have that conversation because all they keep telling me is that it's complaint driven. Well, don't be surprised when something like this happens and everybody gets pissed off and they're going to be looking at us for direction. And I'm just going to be able to say, well, nobody wanted to look into it any further.
Thank you. Okay, Director Grenier and then Director Sao. Did I see your hand up? No, okay. Oh, sorry. No, I've got Director Morris, Director Rain. I do see your hand up online, then Director Grenier.
Starting?
Okay.
Director Morris. Thank you, Chair Roden. Just a couple of quick questions. In principle, and I've had an opportunity to chat a little bit with Doug, of course, on this, the combination of the two areas possibly. And I support the concept completely. I think that we need to be looking at that. Having said that, a couple of things come to mind as we move through it. I think Pittatan as being drawn into that overall picture, I think we may run into some different dynamics a little bit there. So I think we'll need to be sort of conscious of that. And then I noticed something about some housekeeping amendments to all. So I'll be looking forward to hearing what the housekeeping amendments might look like down the road. But in principle, the sharing of the river is an important piece, and we truly are linked a little bit at the hip, shared by a bridge on that one. And thank you very much. Looking forward to this next process indeed. Good idea. I'll get you in a kayak, Doug.
Director Rain.
Yes, just a question about the housing proposal. The study that was done, I believe that was 2 or 3 years ago, was certainly very well received. And it is important with the emphasis that the province is putting on housing that we keep that data up to date. What are your is the planning department's thoughts on any work on housing?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So right now, so in 2019, or every municipality in British Columbia was required to create that housing needs assessment in 2019. So now they're requiring that everybody update that by the end of 2024. So that's where that grant funding has come from. And it allows us to also update the official community plans as well. So I think the goal would be a region-wide, or all the municipalities that want to participate, a new housing needs assessment.
Right. Yeah, it was made mandatory in 2019. We were told, all of us, that we would have to do this now every 5 years, because I suspect some local governments had let it slide or had never done one for rather a long time. And also, I know that the TNRD did afford the opportunity for some communities within the TNRD to take advantage of the economies of scale, I guess. And I know Clinton and Cache Creek, Barry, Clearwater, several, Logan Lake, all did it in conjunction with the TNRD. Mr. Kraus?
Yes, through the chair. And so when that requirement came in, it was already required that it be updated every 5 years. The change now is they want us to look at either a 10 or 20-year window. And so they're saying, take your old report that you just did, even though we need to update it in a couple of years under the old legislation. And on top of what we already were requiring you to do, expand that time window. And so that's what some of this new funding is for. And really now we only have till December 31st of this year to get that done. And I've had a few of the smaller municipality CAOs reach out to me already and ask if there's a way that we can kind of cooperate. And we're certainly happy to do that if anyone wants to participate. But if you want to go on your own and have your own report, more dedicated time spent on your community, that's totally fine as well. I think there's going to be a mass shortage of consultants in BC. Their phones are ringing off the hook already. And I'm afraid that if we don't get on this soon, and with a proposal that's, maybe encompasses a few communities, that we're all competing for scarce resources and might be left behind. So.
A follow-up, if I may. I strongly support this initiative, and certainly Sun Peaks would like to participate.
Okay, thank you. We move on to Director Grenier. Anyone else has questions? Now's the time to put up your hands.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome. It's great to see some new folk faces in the planning department. The Cherry Creek Tobiano area, I know, Alex, that you were trying to find an answer from the province on the orders in council. And so I guess I'll just quickly ask, has that happened yet?
No decision has been made yet. I followed up last week with the ADM. The ADM said it hasn't even reached their desk yet. Maybe for context, there's a question now about the original order in council for Tobiano and whether or not some of the things in there still apply. And that really will dictate what kind of zoning and what kind of vision we can have for Tobiano. Because if they want us to stick to the original vision of a resort with equestrian center and so on, then our zoning has to reflect that. And if that is all out the window, then potentially it's time to talk to the community out there and see what kind of zoning is more appropriate. Maybe start calling it residential zoning and have it updated so it doesn't refer to kind of resort living and temporary accommodation and that kind of language. Unfortunately, we just can't get an answer out of the ministry's office, but I think what they're saying is it's a complicated question, and so it's sitting with the Attorney General's office right now.
And supplementary to that, and you use the word resort. And in the motion that we talked about yesterday, which was about resorts, the two places that are resorts, the Tobiano Resort Community and the Sun Peak area, were not identified because I guess in planning terms, we think about resorts in terms of zoning and planning. And yet the public, when they think about resorts, they think about water, they think about amenities, they think about a whole lot of other things. They're not thinking about planning. And as a developer, I can tell you that the purchase motivation of 50% of second home buyers is waterfront activity. Skiing comes in about 18%. Equestrian doesn't even register because it's so small down the way. But when Ward's talking about Barrier Lake and other lake things, he's saying, you know, there's a lot of pressure to have this resort thing, whatever that is, happen over there. And that was recognized at Tobiano, which is one of the fastest growing communities that we have under a residential format, but it was very much a resort concept. You were going to live in a resort. And all the issues that we're dealing with about Airbnb, which wasn't even a thing 15 or 20 years ago. It certainly wasn't when we were doing the Tobiano planning. It is a thing now. And so that conflict, I've seen Al struggle up at Sun Peaks. You know, you've got temporary use permits and you've got people that feel that they're entitled to use their residential house as a commercial resort thing. We're in a resort. So what I'm suggesting is that the Cherry Creek Tobiano thing, which people have a high expectation, I'll give you that feedback. They have a high expectation that we're going to do a review, that we maybe look at that as kind of a subset that might be able to incorporate this whole resort perspective and this Airbnb perspective. So there might be some utility there. And I would certainly encourage maybe not a full-on review like the P&L and the M&M, but some sort of a secondary look at that Cherry Creek Tobiano at some point in the year that incorporates this resort concept. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I had a couple, Mr. Kraus or Mr. Beeching, how long a process? I know when Ashcroft did an OCP and zoning bylaw overhaul in 2017-18 and about 18 months from start to finish with all the public consultation. What would be the projected timeline be? And also the cost. Again, it was about $80,000 when Ashcroft did this in 2017-18, and inflation has almost certainly caused the price to go up considerably.
So the North Thompson OCP, I believe it started in about 2017 and finished in about 2020. So 3 years was the time frame for that one. I think the budget right now, there's $75,000 budgeted plus the 231,000. I think we'd ultimately like to come back with a better work plan and a better budget. But yeah, to ballpark it, we're probably looking at, 2 years start to finish. Consultation is going to be a really big part of it, especially First Nations consultation. That's probably going to really feed into the timeline. And then the cost, if you were looking to go out and hire a consultant to just take it over, we're handing it over to them, you're probably looking at $250,000 start to finish. I think in-house, we can kind of capture those economies of scale with some of that grant funding. So looking at the, 75 plus the 230 will get us started. Next year, I could see, coming back to the board with a budget request of another 75, unless we see we're very close to the end zone, then maybe bump that up a bit. But yeah, I'll say 3 years, $250,000, and you'd have an OCP that covers 3 electoral areas.
Sorry, just to clarify, what, how many are, we're talking about the OCP for what areas, P and L and Kamloops North, or is this everything that's here?
Yeah, I think P and L or M and N, you could probably, yeah. I'm gonna say 3 years, but we could get really close in 2. And looking at the budget, probably the 75 is gonna be enough to get us started. The 230 is gonna be really good for the entire area. I could see coming back for another 75 or maybe more, but again, I'd like to come back with a more solid work plan and budget, depending on the area that's chosen.
So that 250,000, that would say be, if we said initiate a new Nicola Valley OCP for M&N, that would be $250,000 for just the one.
I think if you're handed over to a consultant to do it, yes.
Okay, but we'd be able to save some money by doing a lot of the work in-house. But that's a lot of work in-house, so that's, while that's being done in-house, other things are not being done because of the concentration on the OCP. Do we have any money in surpluses that would cover something like this? That we could dip into if we needed to, if we said, let's go ahead and overhaul a bunch of OCPs all at once. Go crazy. Do we have money to do that?
Yeah, certainly, I think that's something we can look at. I mean, there is a surplus in development services, so that's potentially an option. I think the reason we didn't come with numbers today is we really wanted to start with some direction as to where we even want to go with this. Right now, we budget in the fall, and we throw in 75,000 in case the board asks us to work on something. But I don't think that's the best way to budget. We should have some kind of direction as to what we're working on so that we can start putting numbers towards that. And in this case, it's not even that we're saying we're going to get 3 OCPs done in a year and a half or 2 years. We wanted to see which area do we even want to hit next. And if we have marching orders to at least initiate 2 areas, it allows us to at least, with a consultant, capture that data, get things started, knowing that it'll take some time. The North Thompson one, yes, it took a few years. We did that off the side of our desk. We had 0 consultants, so we did that one on the cheap. And the consequence of that was it took longer. I think these 2 areas that we've identified here, they're going to be complicated. They have a lot more population. There's a lot more development pressure. There's a lot more First Nations bands that we have to consult with. And consultation today isn't like when we did these OCPs in 96, where we send a referral and give 30 days. We need to have meetings. This is thorough, and we're going to need Mr. Kelly's assistance with that. And so that's certainly both costly and time consuming. But with marching orders to at least know which areas to do next, we can start getting into more detail.
And just for those of you who have not had the pleasure of going through the OCP process, we used Urban Systems because we had no in-house capacity in Ashcroft. And they did a fantastic job. They did massive amount of public cons. They went to the arena and talked to hockey parents and kids dropping their kids off. We formed a committee made up of stakeholders from the community. We had several meetings going over every single word in the OCP and zoning bylaw. So it is a very, very intensive public consultation heavy process. And I can only imagine that in the 5-6 years since we did it, the First Nations consultation requirements have increased exponentially. So I've got Director Stamer and then Director Hodden.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yes, I mean, the municipality barrier, our OCP is dated as well, and fortunately, we've received some funding through the province to be able to help us with that process this spring. My question to Mr. Kraus is, do you have any further data on where we are in relationship to not only the age of these OCPs, but where we should be focusing our efforts? I mean, this is a list of what we have to do, but do we have something a little bit more substantial on what you're seeing coming through the planning department and seeing what's being needed and where the priority should be? Is this the matrix?
Yes, through the chair. So that's the matrix. And frankly, so area P and L, most population, highest development pressure around Kamloops right now. Kamloops North is the oldest. Even if we joke that it was 30 years ahead of its time, it's still old. So that's probably the area. It's the oldest plan and most development pressure. So that area, P and L, certainly high priority. But M&N is also a priority. So it really depends on where the board wants to go with it. If you want us to just focus on one area first, absolutely. If you'd like us to start in two areas to at least get that data collection started, we'll look at that as well. The housekeeping idea was simply to say that all of them need a coat of paint at least. They're referring to legislation that doesn't exist anymore. It refers to areas that are within municipalities now. They all need an update. But highest priority would be the areas where we're getting the most growth pressure, and that would be around Kamloops.
I have Director Houghton next and then Director Grenier.
Thank you. Yeah, if you're looking for guidance, I'm supporting Director Morris on P and L and looking at number one, if you can fit it into your plans, if you want some guidance from the two area directors, if you think it needs to be looked at, and Director Morris is in agreement, let's go down that road. Thank you.
Thank you. And like Director Grenier first.
I would echo that. I'd support that P and L reviews. That's the east and north part of around Kamloops. I don't think a full review of the Cherry Creek Savanaugh is necessary, but I think a revisit of the existing OCP at a lower cost when we get this information is probably quite appropriate. And the M&M, it sounds to me, and a lot of the things that M&M does together, they do a lot together. And so it's probably a priority to get that done since it's been a while. So I'd support those three initiatives on their own timelines and their own, maybe a higher elevation on the two full-on replacement OCPs. Savanaugh, Cherry Creek doesn't need a replacement. It just needs a revisit.
So I'm going to be bold and always dangerous. And I'm going to make a motion that we direct staff to prepare a more detailed work plan and cost estimate to, one, initiate a new OCP for electoral areas P and L, essentially merging Kamloops North, South, and South Thompson and Pinnetan OCP areas into a single OCP area. Two, initiate a new Nicola Valley OCP for electoral areas M and N. And three, initiate housekeeping amendments to all existing OCPs.
Second.
Thank you. Vice Chair Smith. All right, thank you. I'm just reading what staff already had here, so I can't claim the credit. Any further discussion? Everyone okay with this? Director Laird.
So from what I understand is the planning department is going to come back after they've looked at the costs involved and see how it's going to be funded. And have will they have a timeline on a rough timeline on how long and when the OCPs might be completed, or do you have that ability to forecast out that sort of timeline?
Yeah, we'll work on a timeline and a work plan.
And we know we've got $306,000 at least to work with. So. All right, any further discussion, questions, comments? Seeing none on the question. All those in favor? And we have directors online. If all five of you could pipe up yay or nay, please. We're voting on the motion regarding the OCPs.
Yay, Reed.
Thank you.
Yay, Sunbeat.
All right.
And yay, Chase.
All right, Director Hamer Jackson, you're the last one. Oh, he said, all right. Director Bass? Director Bass?
Maybe she's in the bathroom.
She's in the dark. All right, well, we will take her silence as assent. I know we're not supposed to do that, but anyone opposed? That is carried. And with that, thank you very much, everyone. Safe travels home. We stand adjourned.